we go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. And visiting us today on Planet 8 is friend of the podcast, Butch Portillo. Butch has contributed to several DVD commentaries dealing with Ray Harryhausen and also is familiar with the overall dynamic of Dynamation. As a matter of fact, Butch, I believe you've met Ray on a number of occasions. Isn't that right?
Yes, I have. I've had the opportunity to meet Ray on several occasions through the course of about 25 years.
That is awesome. When you were visiting him, is this like at a convention, or were you at like an exhibit, or what?
Well, the first time I met Ray was actually at the famous Monsters Convention, which I think was around 1995, I think it was. And like several fans going up wanting to meet Ray, I went up and I was just like, all scared to death, so to speak, because this was, my idol and stuff. So I go up to Ray and I just kind of, hand my book to him and I says, Ray, I says, I've been wanting to meet you for, so many years. And he goes, well, that's a mighty long time, with that beautiful voice of his. And but then the course of the time, as time would go on, I was invited to many events that Ray was the guest of. And this would either be conventions or just film screenings and so on. And I met a lot of people that were very close to Ray. Arnold Kunert was one of them who just passed away a few years ago. And Arnold set up a lot of meetings with Ray, with me. Dinner time, kind of date kind of things. I was able to meet Ray in the green room. So, Ray actually, he didn't know me, but he knew who I was when he would see me. And,
right.
It was a pleasure meeting him.
Let me kick it over to Chief Engineer Bob. Bob, you and Butch have known each other for quite some time.
Yeah, well, for many years, because we've both been on this planet for many years. We've gone to a couple of Ray Harryhausen appearances. There's expressions in...
Yeah, there was the Alameda show. Oh, not the Alameda show. It was
Emeryville.
The Emeryville show. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a book signing that took place.
And then there's also the one in San Rafael, the theater there.
Ray would frequent that quite a bit. They'd always have him come out, I think, like once a year. Yeah.
The one that really amazed me there was... it was like at the end of the whole... I think Dennis Murin was actually interviewing him in that one. And at the end, Dennis Murin was kind of wrapping up, and Ray was like, wait, I brought something with me. And everybody's like, looking forward, trying to figure out what it was. And he took out this suitcase, and he had one of the flying saucers from Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and he had one of the skeletons from Jason the Argonauts. And he put them up on this table, and he was talking about them and how his father helped him make the UFO on his lathe. He was like a machinist. And then he basically reached over and just moved the head of the skeleton a little bit. And everybody cheered like it was some rock star, like in a guitar solo or something, because it was like, here he is, he's doing his thing, he's right in front of us, he's moving that thing around. But that, and the amazing thing about Ray is just, he moved to England where they speak, the Queen's English.
Right.
And so he was very articulate. And when he spoke, he was very, it's almost like he didn't talk fast. He talked rather slow, like he was choosing his words, and he would always choose the correct words and talk really eloquent about and descriptive about anything he was doing. But But yeah, he was brought to the Bay Area quite a few times, though, right?
Yes.
Well, I know we actually flew, or actually Karen flew down from the satellite to see one of the shows that you put on with Bay Area Film Events. Do you remember that experience, Karen?
Oh, yeah, that was great. That was when we saw the documentary. That was the premiere, I think, in the U.S., right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that was a great event.
Ray Harryhausen, special effects titan.
Is this primitive Earth technology called Skype, if I remember correctly, that was utilized in that show? Did you get the director or someone?
We talked to Alexander Ponset on Skype.
That's right. That's right.
Talked about the documentary and that. But yeah, I mean, we've done our very first show at Bay Area Film Events back in 2004 was the Dynamation celebration, where we showed 20 Million Miles to Earth and Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, and we had John Stanley, who was a local Creature Features host, is the host of it. And we had Phil Tippett there and a panel of local effects experts. And it came off really well. And we also did the premiere of the documentary. And then we're doing a show coming up March of this year.
What year is that, Bob?
That would be 2019.
Thank you.
Yeah. So March of this year. Basically, we're going to be showing 3 days of Ray's films, and we're going to be showing pretty much almost every one. So we're in the process. You can check BayAreaFilmEvents.com for the full schedule. And we're talking to some guests, and it looks like we will most likely have Vanessa Harryhausen, Ray's daughter, there.
Nice. Wow. Nice.
And
nice.
I don't see why we would not have people like Dennis Muren and Phil Tippett, who have appeared at the past two shows, as well. As far as, we're talking to a lot of effects people, from ILM and from Pixar and that, and from Tippett. So should be a really cool show.
That'll be fun. The Dynamation celebration. Butch, let me ask you, what was the first experience or first film of Ray's that you saw? Was it in a theater? Was it on TV?
Well, like most of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s, there was a plethora of Ray Harryhausen films that were played on cable. But I think if one film and one experience had a big impact on me, was probably the reissue of The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And I think that was in 1978, I do believe, that they reissued it in the theaters. And to me personally, that was a huge deal because the print was beautiful. Seeing Ray's Dynamation techniques on the big screen for the first time, and the Cyclops coming out on the his first appearance on the beach,
right?
It was amazing, and it's interesting because seeing it on the big screen, it's so much different than seeing it on your TV. Even with the quality television that we have and the Blu-rays. I've never really been a fan of the Blu-ray print that they have at the Seventh Voyage. It seems very grainy. So what I recall when I seen the Seventh Voyage in 35 millimeter on the big screen, that made a huge impact.
I want to say I saw that theatrical playing of the film, and I want to say it was at the Grand Lake Theater, but yeah, I remember as a kid, 10 years old, it was so dynamic, and the creatures looked, for those of you kids out there who don't know who Ray Harryhausen is, before there was CGI, before there was any inkling of computer manipulation or creation of special effects or creatures in a film, there was Ray Harryhausen. There were no monsters in suits. It was Ray articulating these creatures, skeletons, cyclops, dragons, octopi, frame by frame, and filming them stop motion animation style, kind of like the original King Kong. And so, yeah, that Seventh Voyage of Sinbad was my first introduction to Ray's work. Karen, what was your first Ray Harryhausen film?
Well, I've been trying to think about this because I know that I saw Ray Harryhausen's work on television first, but the event that really stands out to me in my mind is seeing Golden Voyage of Sinbad at the theater. And I saw that as a little kid, and I know, looking it up, it says it was released in 73, but I know I saw it in 74. And I remember my cousins were visiting in spring or summer, and I begged and begged. They're all older than me, and I pleaded because they could drive. I said, take me to the theater to see Golden Voyage of Sinbad. And they did, and they sat through it with me. And I was mesmerized to see Harryhausen on the big screen, because I know I had seen him on TV, and I probably had seen Jason and the Argonauts by then, and probably Seventh Voyage. But seeing Kali on the big screen and seeing, all the I think the other creatures and so forth, just seeing that on a big screen. And back then we didn't have, in my small town, we didn't have, the multiplex. We just had theaters, single theaters with big screens still then. That really imprinted on me and made a huge impact. So even though I know Golden Voyage is not necessarily like the best of his films, to me that has a special place in my heart, because that was the first one I saw on a big screen, and it was just beautiful. To me, even today, I'll pull that DVD out and look at it and just be awestruck.
Very cool. Chief Engineer Bob.
Well, for me, I always loved all the black and whites.
Yeah.
I loved going back to Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and 20 Million Miles to Earth versus the Flying Saucers. It Came from Beneath the Sea. That was basically my Saturday afternoons, because I think growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, Channel 44, I believe, had most of those.
Right.
And so it would be like, the monstrous movie on Saturday afternoon. I'd watch those. As far as the Jasons and the Sinbads and that, I'm pretty sure most of those were on Creature Features. And as far as theatrical, I would say from Golden Voyage on, I saw all those first release, in the original runs in the theater. Obviously, I'm not old enough to have seen Seventh Voyage or Jason the Argonauts' first run, but I have caught those, in the theater since then. Will in Parkway for Thrillville, he used to show quite a few of them.
Yep.
So if you hadn't seen them at an art house or something, I definitely caught them there.
Yeah, that is cool. Let me ask. I'll put this out to all of you, but we'll start with Karen up in the satellite. The Ymir, colorized version or black and white? Where do you side on that, Karen?
It's interesting that you bring that up, because that was one of the movies I watched in preparation for this episode, and I watched the colorized version.
Oh.
Well, normally I don't care for colorized films, but I have to say they did a really nice job on those colorized Harryhausen movies.
I think it was Legendary, right?
I know that even Ray seemed to like them, and I know he worked with the producers of those films. It's still colorized, so it's a little funky looking, but the Ymir looked great. And I know that he, and Butch probably knows this better than I do, but I believe that Ray had actually sculpted or created the Ymir in a greenish color. So the green that they used in the film, I think, represented what he wanted it to look like, but I thought it looked great.
Well, Ray actually supervised all the colorization on those prints that were put out on DVD and Blu-ray. So when Ray was in the studios during the editing process and everything else, he was actually there tweaking the colors with I think I don't recall her name, but it was a woman who was handpicked to do all the colorization. And Ray was there right with her, and tweaking the knobs and telling her this, a little bit more of this, a little bit more gray, a little bit more of that. So
cool, Bob. Where do you land on that?
I always land on the original, on the black and white, but I have seen the colorized 20 Million Miles to Earth, and I think I saw the colorized It Came from Beneath the Sea, and they're not to the point where you wouldn't watch. It looks fine, but again, you want to kind of see it the way it was originally done. And for me, that was in black and white.
There you go.
So,
let me ask you this, Butch. As far as like some of the models go, Do you have any skeletons or is there something that stands out to you that you were like, what the first film he worked on was Mighty Joe Young? That was the official first film that he worked on. That's correct, with Willis O'Brien. He was Willis O'Brien's assistant. But as everyone knows, he did about 85% of the actual animation on that film. That's cool. But as far as can you pick a favorite, or it's just you just love all of his work that he did? Well, there's quite a few things. I mean, getting back to Mighty Joe. I think the quality of animation is probably Ray's best. If you look at the way, in particular, if you look at the facial expressions on Joe. If anybody knows anything about stop motion animation, it's not just about moving the model. Anybody can move it. It's bringing it to life, and that is a very difficult thing for animators to be able to do. So if you look at the way the facial expressions and moving the model, and the way Ray was able to breathe life into Joe, and one in particular sequences where Joe makes an appearance and they're having this little talk. Joe Young is having a talk with the guys about if I'm going to come to LA, and Joe ends up showing up. And if you watch the expression on his face when he notices that the bad guys are sort of here, and they might be a threat to Jill. If you look at the expressions on the model's face, you're in awe, because it's like, wow, Ray was able to put all that emotion into this incredible puppet. That's true. That's a good point. And that figure, it's not like they had a separate head that was like life size or close to life size that they'd animate the expressions. It was all that one model. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, that particular Joe puppet was named Jennifer. That was Ray's favorite. That's cool. Let me ask you this: as far as building out those models, those figures, those points of articulation, things that I've read is that he did most of that stuff. Either his father helped him, or he made himself in his oven in his kitchen. Can you speak to that? I mean, is that in most cases? I mean, his father Fred passed away, I think, in 1973. In most cases, his father built most of his stop motion animation puppets through his armatures. However, for Joe, I think that had a lot to do with Marcel Delgado and the RKO crew. They were basically in charge of producing those armatures. But everything else in Ray's career up until the time that Fred passed away was done by Fred, and with Ray's help, Ray would design the actual puppets and the armatures, and Fred would make them with his lathe at his home. That's interesting. You don't really see anything like that anymore. All the effects houses in Hollywood have changed over to mostly digital. There's not a lot of practical. Well, that's the thing with Ray in his career, especially early in his career. His family, it was a family affair. His mother would make a lot of the clothes and stuff that he would do, the puppets, especially when Ray was doing his own fairy tales. She would make a lot of the clothes and the puppets, and Fred would help Ray build a lot of the sets, and so. I mean, this guy, he was just born to do it. I mean, 13 years old, you see this amazing film called King Kong, and the next thing you know, you're out in your garage and you're doing it. That's true.
Well, you brought up the fairy tales. Can I talk a little bit more about the fairy tales and also his work with George Powell? Sure. On the Puppetoons. That was actually one of his first professional gigs, was working on the Puppetoons.
So when that came out before, like, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Beast of 20,000 Fathoms, was that released theatrically, or how exactly did that come about? Yeah, I do believe so. They were short Puppetoon shorts that were put out. I would assume, I'm not too sure, but I would assume they probably put them out that, like most shorts that would go with a lot of films, like Bugs Bunny cartoons. Yeah, before, I would assume so. The thing is that I do believe that Willis O'Brien also worked on a few of those shorts. But I know that Ray wasn't all that happy about working on the Puppetoons that much
because he wasn't really into the replacement head techniques. You know, that wasn't what Ray, he wasn't really into it. I mean, he took the job. I mean, it was, you know, something that he got his teething on and worked on, but he wasn't all that, he didn't fancy it too much.
I see. Karen, did you ever have a chance to watch any of those shorts?
No, I can't say that I have, actually.
I don't know that they're on DVD. I've seen stills of I want to say it's the tortoise and the hare and stuff like that, but I'd be curious to see if they're on YouTube or something like that. I've never...
I think the Blu-ray for the Puppetoon movie, I think, is out. And there's quite a few of the shorts that are available. They're really fascinating. I mean, if you watch a lot of the techniques, they're just, you know, that stuff is just not done anymore.
Right,
you know, in that kind of a fashion. And the film stocks, you know, the beautiful color film stocks, you know, it's really amazing.
Have you seen any of them, Bob?
I've seen some, and there was a DVD out of, well, it was mostly his fairy tales, right? And then there was some...
That's correct.
Was there any Puppetoons on that or no?
Oh, no, not on that. I mean, those are just separate. There's George Powell's stuff, and then there's Ray's fairy tales.
And then Ray also did, was it an unused bit of animation for War of the Worlds for George Powell?
That was something that was a big passion of Ray's. But when Ray was in during World War II, Ray was in the Signal Corps, and he basically saved there was just like a bunch of stock film that he basically said, well, it's all scrap film, I'm just going to save it, and that's what he used for his fairy tales.
Oh, interesting. And let me ask you this. I mean, what was the transition? Because initially the early films that Ray Harryhausen did were, you know, dragons or octopus or the Ymir invaders going to Washington, D.C. What was it that led him to do the Sinbad films and Jason and the Argonauts and got more into like mythology and mythological creatures and such? Do you know?
Well, I think let's first off, I'd like to say that, you know, Ray, when he did his black and white films, you know, he was very apprehensive about going into color. But Charles Schneer, who is the producer, and I also like to say that Charles Schneer had a lot to do with the success of Ray's career. Because if it wasn't for Charles, who knows where Ray would have ended up as far as his career is concerned, in the longevity of his career. Because as most know, you know, you need a good producer to back you up. And Charles was definitely Ray's. I mean, I think Charles produced all of Ray's films except for one, or actually two. That was the first film, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and the 1 Million Years BC done by Hammer. But all those other films that Ray had done, Charles was behind him. So getting back to your question, like I said, Ray was a little apprehensive about going into color, but you know, they had this story that they wanted to do, and Charles said, look, you know, you got to do this in color. We can't do this in black and white. This can be an epic film. And so Ray ended up doing tests until he felt he was comfortable enough to pull it off. And that's how the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad became.
And that's how that came about.
So is there a difference between Dynamation and Super Dynamation?
No, that was just basically that's something that Charles and Ray just came up with. It was just sort of like, you know, there was Dynamation 90, I think it was, and you know, they just kept on every time they would come out with it was something just to pull in the audience.
So it was marketing.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, but the techniques, you know, itself, you know, I think what ended up happening is that Ray would come up with a new technique to add to the old technique. I mean, the Dynamation process basically started with The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. And I can go on, and when it comes to the details, I don't want to bore you with this, but basically it's a split screen technique that you basically photograph the model in front of a rear screen projection and in glass. And what you do is you mask off each area of the glass, and then you photograph the model with the glass masked off. And then what you do is you rewind the film, and then you mask off an area that was photographed, mask that off, and then you photograph again. And basically, it's a sandwich technique. And then when you project it through the projector, the model is sandwiched in between the foreground and the background, and it's all seamless together.
Wow, it's so painstaking.
Well, Ray came up with that technique based on the fact is that when he worked on Mighty Joe Young, which was a Union film, it went way over budget. And Ray said, look, if I'm going to survive in this business, I got to come up with something that I don't have to rely on glass paintings. I don't have to rely on miniature sets. I just want to be able to drop my model in a setting and have the background with real plates of film, people moving, cars moving, and so on, and also people moving in front, also real people, not just puppets, because that was, if you watch Mighty Joe Young really carefully, you'll notice that a lot of times when a model is supposed to be represented as a person, is actually a puppet. So Ray came up with the technique to basically you throw your model into real settings, and it was done cheaply that way.
Wow, he was a real innovator.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a shame that it took until, I think, 1992 for the Academy to actually give him an Academy Award.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it strikes me, other than Willis O'Brien, who's, King Kong, there was never really anyone else like Ray Harryhausen in the industry with that kind of a rapport or a talent.
Yeah, like I said, stop motion animation is a very specialized field, and like I said, there's not too many people at that time that were able to perform this task. But again, going back to Charles, you need a producer that had faith in you and was able to push those projects, and Charles definitely was there for Ray.
Well, I'll put this out to all of you guys, from Guanji to Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts, all of his work. What is your top 1, 2, or 3 creature moments where you were just awed and it still kind of strikes you today? For me, it's always going to be Medusa. All the little snakes on her head moving, and the sound and the setting and her facial expression and all of that. I love all of his work. A close second to me would be the skeletons in Jason and the Argonauts. A lot of it is the music and the sound effects that works for me in films as well, and very much so in these works that Ray was involved in. Karen, give me 1 or 2 creatures that just really stick with you as a Harryhausen classic.
Oh, well.
Putting you on the spot, I know.
I already mentioned Kali, so that's a big favorite. But then my top 2 would come from Jason. And so I think number 2 would be Talos.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Just impressive, the size and the things that Ray did with him, threatening the Argonauts. That was, and again, like Butch said, the expression that he got in that metal face, the agony that he underwent when Jason unscrewed his heel and his life force is like flowing out. It was like, and he's choking, sort of, he's like grabbing at his throat. It's like, it's just amazing. How did he get that expression into the face? And you actually feel kind of bad for this creature. And then number 1, it goes back to the skeleton warriors, right? You look at that and you're like, how did this man choreograph that? Oh my God, it's unbelievable. The complexities of that is just mind-boggling. And I think we also have to talk a little bit about, and we don't have to do it right at this moment, but you're talking about the music, Bernard Herrmann and the scores to some of these movies just work perfectly. It's sort of like the John Williams comparison with Star Wars or what have you. It's another perfect element that flows right into Ray's work, I think. A match made in heaven. But those would be my top 3.
Bob?
Well, one would definitely, I think, be the ending of 20 Million Miles to Earth when the Emir is atop the Colosseum being shot at, and his whole kind of death scene there. That's definitely a favorite. Just for the drama that Ray put into it.
Right, because you feel for the creature at that moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's
It didn't ask to be subjected to us.
You know, it's similar to like Kong on the Empire State Building and
Right.
you know, the emotions that he showed on his death. But also, this as a monster fan, I think the whole battle between the dragon and the Cyclops in Seventh Voyage of Sinbad was also one of my favorites.
Cool. And Butch?
All right. I only get
We didn't
three.
leave any for you, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
He can duplicate.
I would. Well, there's so many, but I would say number 3 on that list would definitely be the first appearance of the Cyclops on the Seventh Voyage.
Yeah.
The low angle shot, and you have the low angle. The guys are on the beach, and next thing you know, the Cyclops is coming out of the cave, and it's just this beautiful, in the background all you see is a cave and this beautiful blue sky, and the growling Cyclops coming at you. And I mean, if you speak to a lot of effects artists, the Dennis Murans and the Phil Tippett's, they'll tell you right front that was probably one of the scenes that actually got them into the business. Let's see. We'll go with number 2. I would say when the Emer first appears from the egg, the gelatin sort of egg, and he comes out, and he's basically being born, and he wipes his eyes, and he's looking around, and then when the light comes on, he's looking around, he's kind of confused, and I enjoy that part of the film because just the complexity of it and the emotion that the creature is like, well, I'm born now, and where am I at? And I really like that part. And let's see, number 1. Okay, this is probably easy for me. When it comes to Ray's work, I'm going to go back to Mighty Joe, and one of my favorite sequences in the film is the end, and that is the fire sequence where Joe is going up and down the tree trying to save the orphans in the orphanage, which was shot not only in black and white, but it was also in like a sepia tone, I think they called it at the time. It's kind of like a color kind of filter, whatever that is. The emotions that Mighty Joe, the facial expressions, and just the whole animation sequence is pretty amazing. So that's my number 1.
Cool. Let me ask you guys this now, with Ray's technique and just how good he was. How well do you think he would have done using Dynamation in a film like Godzilla or Creature from the Black Lagoon, where we had people in suits portraying the monsters or the creatures? Do you think it would have changed it, made it better, would have been interesting, or just leave the man in the suit as it is? Let's start off with Butch.
Oh, wow. Well, as most know, Ray was not a real big fan of the suit acting techniques. I always kind of cringed a little bit every time Ray would kind of joke about it. I personally think that Ray would have been okay with certain things, but I just feel that, he would have just did it his way, and I don't know. It's a weird question to ask because I've heard Ray many times.
Yeah.
He just wasn't a fan of the technique. So, but
there's the giant monster, the man in the suit, has its own.
I love the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's its own art form.
Yeah, I mean, it's. The thing is that there was many times where I heard that many people wanted to hire Ray outside of Charles and Columbia Pictures where he would work, and obviously that just didn't happen. But I think that if Ray didn't mind mixing things. I mean, I remember later on during his career, especially during Clash of the Titans time, where he actually had to hire Jim Danforth and Steve Archer to help do some stop motion animation because it was so overwhelming for him. So you had 3 animators, and Jim Danforth, as we all know, is a legend, in himself too. And his animation techniques, especially in When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, is some of the finest stop motion animation ever committed to film. So, I think that, I remember reading one time back in the late 70s that, well, they're going to, computers are going to take over and so on. And I remember as a kid, I'm like, huh? What? How's computers going to take over stop motion animation? So, but it, actually that's what CGI is, and that's what's taken over. And Ray considered, his techniques a tool. I always wanted to ask Ray how he felt about if there was another way that he could do it, if he would do it. And I don't think many people actually asked him that. I always wanted to ask him that question. If it wasn't stop motion, what else would you have done?
Yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to your question, and this is kind of a roundabout way to answer it, but I was at the Computer History Museum for a talk by Brad Bird one time. Brad Bird, who did Iron Giant, The Incredibles, etc. And somebody asked him, do you prefer cell animation or CGI? And he said, to him, it didn't matter. He says, you come up with a story, you come up with your characters, you come up with a concept, and then you choose whatever medium you think best portrays that, whether it's cell, CGI, live action, etc. And I think with, you brought up Creature from the Black Lagoon and Godzilla and all that, which are also very close to my heart.
Yeah.
Each character, each monster has its own personality. I think a lot of the personality has to do with the techniques that they were brought to life with. So, would I want to see Creature from the Black Lagoon or Godzilla animated? Not necessarily, although some animation was used in a couple Godzilla films.
Yep.
And, CGI is being used more and more now. So there's different ways to bring these creatures to life. But as far as their original concepts, I would kind of stick to the way they were.
Yeah, leave them as is. How about you, Karen?
I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to that. I kind of think that, like you guys are saying, the men in suits have their own special charm. I don't know that I could envision a more perfect creature than we already have. Although now that you brought it up, I kind of want to see a stop motion creature. I think that would be pretty amusing to see a stop motion creature. But no, I don't know that I want to go that direction.
Okay.
Well, even to flip the tables, it's like you would not want to see the Cyclops or Ymir or any of those as a man in a suit.
No.
You'd want to keep those, again, pure the way that they were, which was stop motion.
A lot of it had to do budgetary. It was a budgetary decision a lot of times. It's just easier for a lot of films, especially low-budget films, to stick a man in a suit, walking around than try to hire a person who was an animator back then. And there just wasn't many people that were proficient in stop-motion animation to do that type of work. If I'm not mistaken, they wanted to do the original Godzilla in stop motion. Didn't Subaraya want to do it?
Eiji Tsuburaya was very, very, very much influenced by
huge King Kong fan.
King Kong.
He had his own print.
And Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Right. So he wanted to do that. But the budget and the time restraints he was given for the original Godzilla, there was no way.
Now think about that.
Do that in time or under budget, so he had to go with a man in a suit.
Now think about that. Ask that question. Yeah. Would you rather have had Godzilla, the original, done in stop motion, or the way it is done in the film now?
No, the original Godzilla, you could probably pull off stop motion because it was him, lumbering over cities, destroying buildings, etc. But when you got to the later films where it's like tag team wrestling and that, man in suit is probably the way to go. But if you're talking about the original, only the original Godzilla, then yes, you could pull that off in stop motion. Which, like I say, Eiji Tsuburaya wanted to, but you only have so much money and so much time, and sometimes that's not going to allow you to do what you want.
This whole thing kind of makes me think about one of Harryhausen's movies that seems like a bit of an oddball, which was 1 Million Years BC. Not only because it's a Hammer film, but because I believe, isn't there some footage in that where they used an actual lizard
That's correct.
Before they start the stop motion, yeah.
Yeah, that was heavily criticized too back then. But yes, Ray used a lizard. It was actually a good lizard too.
It wasn't the Irwin Allen type lizards with the fins glued on and.
Yeah, well, I mean, was it Journey to the Center of the Earth? That's probably the finest example of lizards, the Metrodon type lizards that you'll ever see in a film. It worked.
True.
Well, I'm sure he wasn't happy about the inclusion of an actual lizard rather than just doing it all stop motion.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, it was just one of those type of situations where, they just had to have something live there, I think, for the public to kind of like buy what was going on. But it worked. It worked for the film.
Well, going back to like Clash of the Titans, the one character, the devil type character, I can't remember what the heck his name was.
Calibos?
Calibos?
Oh, yeah, Calibos.
Yeah. He was a combination of actor and stop motion.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And then in, was it Eye of the Tiger? Did they...
Peter Mayhew, who was the statue.
Minotaur? Or the Minotaur?
Yeah.
I think they used some suit in that. But...
Kind of gets back to what Brad Bird said, whatever tells the story.
Well, pick your medium.
Yeah.
Pick your technique.
Mm-hmm.
What's easy to use and budgetary. That's all what it was about back in those days. Now people just write checks and say, okay, no problem. I'll spend $200, $300 million. But if you look at most of Ray's films, most of the budgets were just in the 200,000s, 300,000 areas. They made over $1 million. A lot of his films were popular, but they really didn't make a ton of money. I think the Golden Voyage of Sinbad was probably one of the most profitable films that Ray ever made. I mean, you look at a movie like Guanji, it died at the box office, but that's a brilliant film. I mean, it's tons of animation is in that film, but unfortunately, it was just kind of like pushed under the shelf a little bit. It was shown briefly and just went away. It was double billed with garbage films.
That's too bad. It is a good film.
I mean, really, the thing that amazes me is you'll sit there today and you'll watch all these credits roll by, and you'll see something like, let's say, Infinity War or something, where there's like a dozen different companies, and each one has 50, 60 people or more that worked on, every little bit of the film, and these credits just go by and go by and go by. And back then it was special effects by Ray Harryhausen. And that was it.
That's true.
So it's,
This effects house animated the right hand. This one did the left hand.
This one made Thanos' finger snap, and that was...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always funny when you always ask people, they say, have you seen that Ray Harryhausen movie? You don't hear about the director. You don't hear about anything else. It's always Ray's films.
Now, let me ask you guys this. We're coming towards the end of the podcast here. As far as, nobody does what Ray did anymore. Almost everything's CGI now. There are some exceptions here and there. Same with the Godzilla films. I mean, that new movie that's coming out in 2019, I think it's all CGI, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys think that there's something lost in films like Jurassic Park that are using CGI dinosaurs, or the new Godzilla that aren't using men in suits, Or is it just a natural progression of the medium of film? Let's start with Karen.
I knew you were going to start with me.
Sticking it to you, Karen.
Man, and he's supposed to be my friend.
There's no friends in podcast
I
land.
know how to get the best answers out of you. Put that pressure on you, Walker.
Oh my gosh. So if I speak with my heart,
Yes.
Please do so.
With the heart.
If I speak with my heart, then I do kind of feel like there's something lost. I kind of miss the stop motion, and it's sentimental because that's what I grew up with.
Sure.
Now, on the other hand, though, when CGI is done right, it can be fantastic. It can take your breath away. I think the problem is we see a lot of really crappy CGI out there.
Yeah.
So it is sort of a natural progression, but we will always have Ray's films, and I'll always sit and watch them. So that's kind of my hedging my bet answer for you.
Very good. See, I knew I could get a good answer out of you. Bob.
Answering a question without answering a question. Well, the thing about Ray's films and the whole thing about stop motion and that is it lent an air of fantasy to him. That was like a whole world, sort of, that was the atmosphere, and you could, and it basically took you to a fantasy land. Whereas CGI tries to be as realistic as possible and keep you right there, in the real world with everything. And, as a kid growing up, I loved going to that fantasy land and going and seeing these, creatures come to life. And, CG, it's almost like, back in the old days, when you're watching movies, it's like the first thing you ask is, how did they do that? Mm-hmm. Well, now the answer is, well, they sat behind a computer and clicked on some keys. But back then, it's like, okay, how did they do that? Is that a guy in a suit? Is that stop motion? Was that saucer on a wire and they blew it up? Or, how did this thing actually get made? And that's what gave birth to all like famous monsters and everything else, because Forey Ackerman and whoever would tell you, here's how these things were done. And that was a whole part of the fun, is trying to figure out how these films were made. And I think that's something today that it's really not, you don't have that, let me research this and see how they did this, or find out how they
I think
pulled this off.
Some people do, because I never had a 15 millimeter that I could do my own little animation. Some people would do that, their own stop motion, but these kids are going on the computers and doing amazing things. The evolution of YouTube and stuff.
Right, but they have a way of, they know the way to do it. It's like, okay, they use this program or this computer or whatever. It's not like these kids are sitting in their garage and trying to rig up models to explode, or time how many movements per second they have to do of this model to make it go.
Or make the model.
Or make the models, or whatever.
True.
There was so much that had to be innovated and created and invented back then, that now it's like, sit you behind this computer and here's the program, do it.
Download it.
So.
Butch?
Oh, wow. You left me with the last part. Okay. I enjoy CGI. I really do. If it's done right, I enjoy it. I just have a love for the old techniques, and that's not only stop motion animation, but the suits and the props and everything. So it was just a different era. We grew up in those times, so we have a very huge sentimentality toward that and those techniques. Will those things work now? Sure, a lot do. We still have, was it Shape of Water, is it? We still have those techniques working for modern films. Can a stop motion animation, a full feature, be made today with a monster? Doubt it. I don't think it will ever happen, and I don't think there's a lot of people who have the expertise to do so. So I would just, I'm a tech guy when it comes to the love of stop motion. I love the way the old guys do the techniques, how they build the models, how they build the sets, how they were able to convince us that this little, 12-inch puppet, can breathe life and show you that it can move and it can terrorize your heart. So, I think that, those techniques just, unless they're on a smaller scale, they won't work today. So I think CGI, until something else comes along and beats CGI, I think just the progression of time, we just have to accept the techniques that we have.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think, stop motion these days is pretty much relegated to like Nightmare Before Christmas or Isle of Dogs or, any other
very specialized
number of,
very specialized films.
But it's almost like, I don't want to say kids films, but, basically a step above cartoons type of thing.
It's not like Dynamation and 7th Voyage.
Right. Well, they're not trying to pull off something that looks realistic.
No.
Or, try to look realistic. It's more like this is a fantasy world and this is the way we're bringing it to you. I watched Isle of Dogs recently, and it's pretty amazing. and again, it's all stop motion. But of course, with all those films that are stop motion, they're also enhanced somewhat with CGI. So.
Well, a lot of the techniques that they use today, they have a lot of computers that they can frame grab their animation and make it smoother. Ray and those guys were subject to nothing like that. They didn't have any video units that they can see their animation. They basically had to do the stop motion, send it off to the lab, and say, okay, let's see how it came out. There's a pliers there. There's something wrong here. I missed a frame, or the telephone rang, or whatever.
Let me ask you this. I forgot, Butch. Do you know how many hours or days it would take Ray to animate like a minute of film?
Well, 24 frames per second, I don't know. The thing about it is though it took Ray years to make these films.
Yeah.
And he was working alone. So, if you look at the time period of his films, it would take up to 2 to 3 years just to complete the animation. He was, like I said, he was doing it all on himself. The animation sequence for the Jason the Argonaut skeleton sequence, that took like 3 to 4 months.
Wow.
And that was just one sequence for that film. And to this day, when you watch that sequence, you're in awe, and you're like, how can all these skeletons be moving, fighting all the men, sequentially like that? And it's incredible. So
it's like, this was before they had cell phones. Imagine someone calling him and just like, all right, was it the left skeleton or the right skeleton I was animating, trying to keep track of?
He actually talked about that in one of his appearances. He would say that he'd be animating like the 7-headed Hydra, and he'd have to remember.
Yeah, the Hydra.
Wow. This head's going forward, this head's going back, this mouth is opening, this one's closing, this one's turning to the right, and then the phone would ring. And he was also talking about, and I never really even thought about this until he mentioned it, is lighting the sets.
Right.
Oh,
and it's like the skeletons, this is like a 5-minute sequence, and it took him 3 months or whatever. Well, as you're animating, that light bulb that's on the set is getting dimmer, and you can't see it physically getting dimmer. Mm-hmm. But if you look back at the film, suddenly everything's getting dimmer. So he would have to change those lights out like every single day to keep it all at the same level.
Yeah, that was a big problem for Ray. Ray had it was very challenging for him to keep the light balances in his film and the color changes that would happen. Gwanji is a perfect example of Ray having issues with color balances.
Interesting. Well, overall, this has been a very interesting discussion and podcast. We want to thank you very much, Butch, for coming out and visiting Planet 8.
My pleasure.
Sharing the information with us. This brings us to our Sensor Suite portion of the podcast. Going to turn it over to Chief Engineer Bob to talk a little about a future show coming to the area.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a Ray Harryhausen show. What a coincidence. Coming up March 1st through the 3rd at the Balboa Theater in San Francisco. And we're going to be showing basically pretty much all of Ray's films.
Nice.
Over the course of 3 days, as well as the documentary, Ray Harryhausen Special Effects Titan. And we'll probably throw in a few odds and ends, puppetoons, or fairy tales and whatever scraps and bits and pieces we can find. And we're definitely going to have some local special effects people involved. Hopefully, people like Dennis Murin or Phil Tippett. Also, our main guest for the weekend will be Vanessa Harryhausen, daughter of Ray Harryhausen.
Wow.
So
looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Should hopefully be a whole lot of fun. So you can go to BayAreaFilmEvents.com for more information. You can follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/BayAreaFilmEvents, and there is an event page for the Ray Harryhausen show, which we are calling the Dynamation celebration after our very first show 15 years ago. So it's like our anniversary and our redo of the Dynamation celebration, and it's all going to come together on March 1st through 3rd, 2019 at the historic Balboa Theater in San Francisco.
That sounds great. Hope to see some of you listeners out there. This brings us to the end of our podcast, and on that note, we're going to conclude this transmission of Planet 8. I'd like to thank all of you intergalactic listeners each and every episode for tuning in, and be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.blogspot.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic. You can also join the conversation. Find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
I've had a great success in practically, I would say, 90% of everything I wanted to do, I did. I'm told the stars of my films were my creatures, because most of them received the best write-ups.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.